Mayor, Council. My name is Mike Gardner, 618 Ruth Street. And I just want to say the first house my parents bought in Florida had an old septic tank in the backyard, and it had a shallow well with a pipe going down through the floor of the garage. No filtration, no purification, no nothing. I drank that stuff for years.
And look what it's done.
Look what it's done. I'm really thankful we've got the Port Orange Public Utilities taking care of our water here. I just spent about 8 hours in a dentist chair over the last 2 days. And I've had the same dentist for 30 years. And I said to him, it was, I guess yesterday, when I first went in there, I said, look, how can I convince Port Orange to quit putting fluoride in my water? And he says, what, you don't like fluoride? And I said, no, I really don't. And he says, well, get a filter. Take it out. And my contention was I shouldn't have to filter something out of my water that the city is putting in for me. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the benefits of tooth decay or how much it cost me to get that. It's a philosophical, and it's an ethical, and it's a moral issue with me. I should not have to take something out of my water that somebody else has decided is good for me. Now, I can sit there and look up at this council and say, guys, if you turn yourself over to me for 6 months, I can get you a lot healthier than what you are now. But you're going to have to eat some things that you don't normally eat, and you're going to have to do some things you don't normally do, and you're going to say, Mike, kiss off. I'm perfectly happy with the way I am right now without you telling me how to get healthier. And I'm perfectly happy not having fluoride in my water, and you're telling me for my own benefit I got to have it. I don't see that. Now, he and I went around, my dentist, back and forth. I said, we've known each other for 30 years. We both regret the fact that we didn't go to Woodstock back in 1969 when we had the chance. So we share a lot of similarities. I am an old hippie. I wish well, maybe I'll get a chance to speak to Mr. Duran. So he spoke a lot about studies. Now, one of my main complaints when people start talking about studies is a difference between statistical significance and practical significance. And whenever you read a study and it starts talking about the percentage change, the percentage difference, you need to go back and look at the raw data and see what it is they're talking about in terms of practical significance, not just statistical significance. 3 minutes. That's not nearly long enough.
Thank you. Here, next.
Hello, Jill Jenkins. I'm not speaking today as an expert. To be honest, I could care less what any of your opinions are as to whether fluoride is beneficial to ingest or not. I'm speaking to you today as a mother and as a citizen. I'm here today because I'm concerned that we're spending a lot of time here asking the wrong questions. The question should not be whether fluoride is beneficial or harmful to ingest, but whether it is the role of the municipality to add any medication or mineral, for that matter, to the public water supply. According to the CDC, 10% of the U.S. is deficient in iron and vitamin B6. 1/3 of the entire world is deficient in some sort of USRDA actual recommended mineral. So why are we not adding this to the water supply? When most people talk about what they enjoy about being an American citizen, the first thing that comes to mind is freedom. And for the most part, we are free to make our own choices as long as it doesn't harm others. And as a mother, I should be free to make decisions regarding my family's health and nutrition. And that's why I'm here today. But due to our city's policy of adding fluoride, this decision has been made for me without me ever having agreed to it. What is my option as a citizen to opt out of this antiquated system? In 7 years of being a citizen in Port Orange, I've never enjoyed the simple luxury of drinking a glass of water straight from the tap. Since fluoride has been added to the water, there has been much higher instances across the U.S. of dental fluorosis in children. And as was mentioned before, the CDC this year just lowered the recommended levels from 1.2 to 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is nearly half. I mean, that's a pretty big difference. Add to this the caustic nature of undiluted fluoride, which contains a warning label, even on the exact product that you're adding into our water, warning us not to ingest it. And as we mentioned, one of the council members mentioned last time we discussed this, back a couple years ago, a tanker truck spilled 4,500 gallons of fluoride onto I-4, which sent 50 people to the hospital and was dubbed by the Orlando Sentinel as the worst chemical spill in Volusia history at that time. When the city of Port Orange first decided to add fluoride to the water supply decades ago, the intention was undoubtedly to help the community obtain fluoride. It was a decision based on the world at that time. And since that time, nearly all commercial dental products do contain fluoride. And as someone who tries to avoid fluoride, I can personally attest that the dental products without any fluoride are very hard to find and much more expensive than the less expensive ones you can find anywhere.
Bring closure to your statement.
Okay, sure. I know that each and every one of...
You need to give us some facts, if you don't mind. Do you have any facts?
I'm not an expert.
Well, thank you very much.
Ted Knopfel, Chickadee Drive, Mayor. Before I get started, are we going to have the opportunity to ask questions of the expert you chose to bring here tonight?
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing is, Mayor, before I start those questions, I want to make a statement. And it's a statement about trust. This council made a promise to the citizens of Port Orange in February of last year that they would bring in experts, not people with opinions like me, but experts, medical experts, who would present the other case. That hasn't happened. Up until yesterday afternoon, this gentleman was going to slide in right here and fill that role. And that is detrimental to the trust that we need to have in you people, that when you say something, it's going to happen. So I trust, Mr. Ford said a moment ago, that we are going to have the other side heard. When are we going to do that?
Jake is trying to find someone to speak to that.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time, Mayor, finding somebody that can speak factually about it. I can bring anybody in that can speak against it, but factually about it, they exist. I just can't get them.
Well, I did a simple Google search here today, and then I think there's 1,400,000 hits you get on anti-water fluoridation articles.
Mayor, it's hard to get 1,400,000 people contacted in here. We've contacted a few of the notable people in the local area. I just can't get them here. So I will
First article
continue.
I pulled off, Mayor had 114 anti-articles. 114 professionals chose to write again, or were cited in this simple presentation by Dr. Limbach, a dentist. So they are out there, but there's probably a willingness or lack of a willingness to perhaps bring them in here is our problem, Mayor. But in any event, I do have a couple of questions for our expert if we could hear from him.
Does anyone else want to speak before we go to questions? Would you come back up, Doctor?
Start?
Go.
Are you familiar with fluoridated toothpaste and mouthwash? I'm sure you are.
Yes, sir.
Why do they contain the severe warning they do?
Well, I'm not a food expert, but I would have to say that that's something that the Food and Drug Administration would regulate. I'm more of a person that deals with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yes, but you understand the question. If I take a double dose, if I'm gargling with fluoridated mouthwash, and all of a sudden I swallow twice, once I'm okay, but the second time they want me to contact the Poison Control Center. Why would that be? Is that a dangerous product, perhaps, that's in it?
I am not in a position to... I wouldn't be swallowing gargle or toothpaste, but I'm sure it has happened in the past, and we know it's happened in the past, because the Centers for Disease Control would put something like that on there.
Absolutely. They put it on there for a reason. Would that be a good guess?
Yes, sir. But they're also the same group that is one of the, what you would call a proponent of fluoridation, the same group that puts the label on it for food products to say not to do it. So I guess you have to concern yourself with context of how you look at the content of
Well,
the
those people that
concentration.
write against it and speak against it are certainly not proponents for it. You would agree with that?
No,
Just
like
from a
I said,
logical
that
point of
if
view.
you look at, like I had said, that there's a, and I think most of my discussion up here was trying to take an opinion of what the people that have concerns would be against the fluoridation. I mean, the people that are just, that may not, claim they're not experts, they have some feelings about that.
My time's running down. Why
Right.
won't manufacturers certify this product as safe for human consumption? So I understand there's only two places you can dispose of this hydrofluoric acid in the country, landfills and the water supply. But why won't they certify it, these manufacturers?
Well, manufacturers don't certify any of the chemicals because, like sulfuric acid and caustic soda and the chemicals that we use at water plants, then themselves are very dangerous chemicals. And we have OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration regulations that dictate that. So what is important is that the chemical is NSF certified, National Sanitation Foundation certified, for use in a public water system, which the chemicals that you use are.
The optimal word there being sanitation.
Well, it's called NSF International now, is their title, but it was sanitation.
For a lot of years.
I would be a sanitation engineer to deal with water and wastewater treatment. That's
Where
what
does
we
that
used to be called.
hydrofluoric acid come from? How's it made?
In terms of its manufacture,
Yeah.
at the top of my head, I would not.
I'm
be
looking
able
at
to
an
comment.
article here, and it says it's recovered from smokestack scrubbers. Do you know that to be an incorrect statement? Or?
Well, I can tell you that it would not be able to achieve NSF certification for use in a public water system by law if it was, because the NSF certification process prevents from utilizing chemicals that would be harmful if used in a water supply.
Thank you. Mayor, I think from this simple exchange, and I'm not an expert, you can see we need to hear from the other side on this
And
issue.
we'll try to get somebody.
For real?
He's
And
working on it.
Yes, Mayor, and I welcome anybody who can help me get that person here.
Welcome, Ted.
That'd be great.
All right. Any other questions? Foreman has a question. Reintroduce yourself for the
Sorry, Jill Jenkins again. And I have one question. I'm not sure that if you're going to be able to answer this, or maybe Mr. Johansson. Earlier you mentioned that there was an existing 0.2 milligrams per liter of fluoride naturally in Florida water. Are we looking at this prior to adding the 0.7, or are we really getting like 0.9 in our water, or are we adjusting for this naturally occurring level?
Yeah, you adjust.
We
You
do adjust.
You adjust
Okay.
because you're going to do the recommended dose. So if it was
So it
0.6,
overall comes to 0.7. It's
yeah,
not
you're
we're adding 0.7.
You're adding 0.5
Okay.
to be able to
That was my only
approach the
question.
dose.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a quick question while Mr. Gardner's coming up?
Yeah.
Steve,
Yes, sir.
real quick, when we go to 0.7, what's the parts per million in the water? Do we know?
0.7 milligrams per liter is 0.7 parts
per million.
It's the same. If you're assuming the density of water is 1.
Okay, and so just I'm looking at a piece of again internet. What do I believe? But toothpastes are about between 1,000 and 1,500 parts per million. So
unless you, sometimes the dentist gives you the toothpaste that's for like in the evening, which has 4,000.
right,
parts.
that's a prescription. So just to clarify, so I'm clear, the toothpaste swallowing is a lot more potent than water swallowing.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Okay,
it's
got it.
no comparison. Hence why the group is going to.
That's why
there's a health issue there because you don't want to do that. Right?
Sure, got it.
Correct.
All right, thanks. Sorry, Mike.
Pray for me.
Mike Gardner again. As I said, this is not so much a health issue with me as a personal preference kind of issue, but one of the things, and I mentioned this to Scott when we were talking on the phone, is I run a lot and I also sweat a lot, and between those two things, when I run, I drink an awful lot of water, and my dentist idea was, well, filter your water and carry it with you. And I said, that's not an option. And I'm not carrying 2 liters of water with me when I go running. But I know where every water fountain is in Port Orange and South Daytona and Ponce Inlet and Daytona Beach Shores. And I stop by there a lot. Talk about regulating dose. How can I regulate the dose when I'm out there running? I can't. I drink a lot more than a normal person. And in talking to Scott, we got a lot of kids that play ball in this town, and they're out there decked out in pads, and they're playing football, and they're out there running on the soccer field for hours at a time, and I guarantee you they're running through as much water as I do. And I don't think that we mix up their Gatorade with bottled water out there. So they're probably consuming, what, I guess 8 times? What would you guess more than a normal person?
At least 3 or 4 times. If the coaches want to keep them hydrated, you have to have them drink the water. And that's, like I said earlier, that's the dose issue of how you control what a medical doctor would say what the dose of that person was. Because it's going to be different for you depending on which fountain you drink out of it. If you're going to just different communities that may have different levels of any chemical. That's correct.
Port Orange supplies all those communities water. But really, there is no way to regulate the dose in that case. And that worries me a lot.
As the word dose is used in terms of a medical explanation. In terms of your intake, yes, you're taking more mass in, and you can't control that unless you treated it. That is correct.
Right. Second thing, and this is, I'm having to dig back a couple years now because it's been a couple years since we had that first meeting. You mentioned that there was a 30% decrease in cavities in kids, I believe, in fluoridated water in the documents.
Yes, that's
I recall a study by somebody in Carlos, Brunel and Carlos. Remember that?
Right.
Okay, that has been really called into question. I believe that's where the 18% to 30% decrease in cavities is in children. The largest study ever done, 1990.
Right.
Can you comment on back when people went to the hard data, the actual data, as opposed to what I mentioned earlier, the percentage change, which is great. An 18 to 30% change only resulted in about a half a cavity out of 128 tooth surfaces.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. Yeah, because what you're also doing is you're talking about the issue relative to your statistics and the way you present data, because you can present data any way you want if you're smart enough, right?
Yeah.
And there's been some recent publications that have talked about 70 years. If you look at the first study that was done, it was only a 15-year study. And, of course, if you were the proponent, say, ha-ha, there's my evidence that I need to do this for the society because I have these great numbers to protect and to provide. If you look at the 70 years over it, nowadays, because of the advent of different things that we're exposed to, the data may have changed. And so if you look at that data has changed. As far as going, I have not gone into the actual raw data and seen that they did analysis of variance, what their statistical methodology was. But you are right when, and I tell this to my students all the time, when you do use percentages, you mask a lot of information. And so it's a judgment call on the value of what you believe that article or that data point is. And that was an average over many different studies when you look at the aggregate percentage. So each study could be in itself different if you're talking about percentages, right?
Let me ask the question, because I'm going to bring closure. After, no different than drinking a case of beer, it passes through you. What happens with the water you consume that has this product in it?
As far as how much uptake
How much remains?
And that depends on the person and their actual physiological system, because every single person is a little different in terms of your salt uptake. And this would equate to chloride, bromide, fluoride would be different, particularly in a child versus an adult. And so it's an individual basis. I don't know off the top of my head what the mass per mass is. But when you bring up the issue of, when you're talking about the issue of uptake, and when you talk about these chemicals of emerging concern, these nanogram levels of concern, same type of argument about how does that affect my reproduction, or my, not that I want to reproduce anymore, but how does that affect my ability to, and my endocrine disruption, these systems that we really don't know. And it's not just fluoride, it's a bunch of other chemicals that we're not sure of, right? And so that's the question now in terms of chronic versus acute. All right. Now, obviously, if I'm taking the toothpaste and I'm drinking the toothpaste, I have a chronic exposure. But the drinking water systems, based on the fluoride that they dose, it's based on a chronic, long-term, like disinfection byproducts. You can drink 1 or 5 or 10 or 10 gallons of the water in that one event and not be harmed. But if you were to drink the 10 gallons over your whole life, that's where the people against it are saying that that's an issue for them, right? So you have to segregate chronic versus acute decision making before you make your decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's funny because you go back to the, I don't know how many people were in the Army and basic training and boot camp, and they sweated out and then they made you stand at attention while they threw salt tablets in your mouth.
Yeah, because you saltpeter.
No, it wasn't saltpeter. That's a different thing.
You
didn't know what they were doing.
Maybe it was saltpeter. I can tell you that.
All right, let's go.
I got one more comment to make. My wife has some decreased kidney function, and one of the things that fluoride has been linked to are kidney diseases, and it's also one of the reasons that one of the ways that it's cleared. The kidney filters out the fluoride. Now, as we age and our kidneys begin to become less efficient, what's going to happen to us as we consume the same amount of fluoride that we were as young people? Basically, what you're doing is telling me, as an old guy,
you clean that up real good.
Yeah, it was tough. But as an old guy, you know, in order to keep the teeth of the youngsters healthy, you're going to poison me.
Right.
Come on.
All right, thank you. Closing. Again, Steve, been very informative. I certainly appreciate you coming over, and I hope you drive safely home.
I do too.
Well, actually, we will stop the rain just so you can return home
All right,
safely.
yeah.
That is one of our responsibilities. Yes.
We have another.
If you do it
Come
quickly,
on up.
come on. Are they new ones?
I think they are.
Okay.
Technical topic. Diane Gardner, 618 Rue Street, the lady with the bad kidneys,
Okay.
GFR of like 50. I'd like to know if this product would be added today, as it was added so, not casually, but as it was added in the 50s. I was born in 47. Would it be added today? That's my first question. And secondly, how political is this? Is the fluoride lobby, how, you know, I believe Congress is corrupt. And I believe they're, you know, both sides of the aisle are bought and sold by various folks. Is this a political issue? Is this a money issue with Congress?
On the first question, you're absolutely correct. The standard of care, what I mentioned earlier, has changed over time as more data has been presented, and as that number has decreased over time from what used to be 1.2 in maybe 1960, 1970. Today it's 0.7, and maybe in another 10 years it may be 0.6. So that standard of care number has been adjusted as more information is available regarding to this. And the sides still don't change. The arguments on both sides have not changed, but the standard of care has changed. So that's correct. The second one, I am not a politician. I am an engineer,
Yes, sir.
and I have my own opinions about Washington, and I just not say it.
So you're not able to speak to that.
I really don't know. I have no idea. There's insufficient evidence in my mind to even know whether or not this is true or not. I have my suspicions, but I'm up here as a technical resource, not as a politician.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
I got another question for you. I don't know if you can answer.
Let me go down.
It's a quick one.
Well, heck, no, I don't
Okay.
mind. But let's
Okay.
get some kind of order.
I just don't want to forget.
I understand.
I'm going to write it down.
Closing.
Doc, have you ever
Briefly closing.
I don't want to have to bring him back. So, in the argument of not adding fluoride to water, especially in a system like we have where there's already the existence of some fluoride, is there any data or research out there that says, well, if folks are using proper practices in dental hygiene and utilizing fluoridated toothpaste, that you also need to have this in your water? Versus, no, if they're doing that, there's no evidence to suggest you need it.
My understanding of that issue is that, and you look at the pro side and all their thousands of data, that relative to that issue, you do get a lot of fluoride in other sources of supply. Now, you know, relative to the cavities, the sugar content of, I see 2 Coke Zeros, I see some water.
Now, see, now you don't have to be all critical.
See, now,
Why are you pointing that out?
You know, when you talk about the intake, you know, that makes it very complicated because it depends on you. Again, it's not like a drinking water issue. It's a personal health care issue about the individual and how they perceive their life, right? So I don't know of any data that definitively says that, well, today your intake should be lower, but we do know that it's obviously true because they've lowered the amount, because the amount that you put in your water systems predicated on the amount that your exposure is going to be during your day-to-day life. And so that number gets ratcheted down because the availability becomes greater. I mean, the ADA wants people to not have cavities, right? Although they may be caught in a conflict of interest, because then who are they going to work on, what teeth are they going to work on? Like plumbers that they put the perfect pipe in your house, what are they going to do? So, so that I'm not sure that that data is available. We do know that they are lowering the level, and that is part of that calculation.
Okay. And then, Mayor, just for Andy Neff, when he has an opportunity to confirm for us exactly what are our levels of fluoride testing addition to the fluoride? Is it? I know you gave out a number. Is that
I
because
believe
you
it's 0.2 based on my discussions with your water treatment
so it's
professionals.
pretty
that you have on
consistent at
staff.
that, Andy? Okay, thank you.
Good.
All right, if somebody takes the steps, Ms. Jenkins said that she has never ingested tap water, so you're drinking bottled water or whatever source, so she's taken action to not use fluoridated water. But if she bathes, obviously you're not bathing in bottled water. You know, if you have a swimming pool that's filled with Port Orange water, will there be some residual or some, absorption into the body from bathing and swimming in the water versus just not drinking it? And can you speak to like how much that would be? It would probably be minute traces.
I'm not a medical professional,
Okay.
but we are pretty predominantly composed of water. If you ever watched the original Star Trek episode where they basically demonstrated how much water they had a little machine that they zapped the person and they turned into a cube. I don't know if you remember that episode. And so we're basically water.
Yeah.
As far as the mass transfer of salt through your, if you were to immerse yourself in salt water, does that mean that you're going to get a lot of salt in your bloodstream? I don't know the answer to the question, but I do know if you immerse yourself in water that has disinfection byproducts that are organics, the organics will work its way to your bloodstream, but I'm not so sure about salt.
What about fluoride?
Which that's salt.
Okay,
That's a mineral.
okay, the hydrofluoride,
Fluoride is
okay.
salt. It's a mineral.
Okay,
It's
so-
like sodium chloride, sodium fluoride, sodium bromide. It's a mineral. It's a salt.
But there's a chance that a small, minute amount may possibly, if
I
you
think
bathe
that's a
enough.
question for a medical professional. I can comment on disinfection byproducts as I've done research relative to the exposure in the shower predominantly through the lungs and through the exposure, but those are organic chemicals, and our skin is mainly organic in nature.
So there is a transfer
of the organics, but I don't know about
if they're in the water, that would.
Yeah. But I don't know about the salt.
Okay, that's fair enough. Appreciate it.
Don?
Want to thank you for coming out. Really appreciate the dialogue. It's been very helpful.
Hopefully I've been helpful and that I can go back and get the report that, hey, I actually did something.
Do we have to give you a grade or anything?
I was going to say,
Yeah, you can grade me all you want, but I'm not going to share that with my
Mayor, does
students.
he need a note? You know, when students come, well, they usually get a note from
Yeah,
us.
get a note so I can go home.
Well, when your curriculum vitae alone takes up more than half of our agenda package.
Yeah, when he told me he was going to print that out, I said, what, are you crazy?
Well, if they doubt you, all you have to do is have them look. You're on. I mean, your performance has
I'm
been
gonna block their
documented
internet
via
sources.
film.
You good, Bob?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really
Yes, appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And
All right.
if you need a recommendation, we'll be glad to recommend you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming over. Great
I
job.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Safe travels.
Go Knights.
Go night. Yeah, they're not doing
$700,000 to not get the job? You've heard that, right?
Oh, I've heard.
700. Did you get 700,000 not to do the job? Would you take that? That's
I wish I was the faculty member.
You'll be paying for that.